Hello, welcome back to the channel, Jimmy here, and today we're going to talk about Hollywood Vikings. The time has come. Hollywood has been making Viking movies for absolutely decades, and there are some fun trends and tropes that you can see in some of these costume choices that were made, and this video is going to look at a selection of blockbuster Viking movies. So first of all, we're going to go to 1958, and we're going to look at The Vikings, which stars Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis. Then we're going to go to 1964 to The Long Ships, which has Richard Widmark and Sidney Poitier starring. Then we're going to go into the 1970s and we're going to look at The Norseman, which stars Lee Majors from The $6 Million Man and also Susie Coelho from The $6 Million Man. Then we're going to jet forward to 1989 and check out Terry Jones's Eric the Viking. Then we're going to go to 1999 to look at an angelic young Antonio Banderas in The 13th Warrior. Then we're going to look at Outlander, not that Outlander, the 2008 historical sci-fi thing, Outlander. Then we're going to have a look at a couple of things that we can track all the way through that into more modern productions like the Vikings TV show. So, let's start. And before we start, I'm going to say thank you ever so much to my generous coffee donator, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your coffee donation. That was super, super generous of you. So, now that we've got the mushy stuff out of the way, let's go to 1958. I've got my laptop just here, and I'm going to be watching the film, and then I am going to give you my take on some of the costuming as I see it. Let's roll. Okay, so, need a cup of tea for this. My main takeaway from 1958's The Vikings so far is this boob holder. That's meant to be a pillory that they've put Janet Leigh in, and it's fully got a bosom cut out. It's like a tailor-made bosom holder for Janet Leigh so that we can look down her dress, which is really creepy. That's terrible. So Janet Leigh in this is wearing, I mean, she's wearing a 1950s bullet bra to start with, so, you know, that's very clear. Her dress is like a surprisingly sympathetic attempt at doing an Anglo-Saxon overdress. She's got the wide sleeves of the overdress and then the tight kirtle sleeves underneath. That's surprisingly sympathetic. She's also wearing a wimple or a veil over her head. It's a fairly long dress. I'm surprised. Overall, for a 1950s film, they seem to have tried their best. I mean, she's got a bit of a plunging neckline, but it's pretty good compared to a lot of modern productions. I mean, obviously the plunging neckline is there for this insane shot. This sequence is so weird. They're like throwing axes at her as she's in this. It's a boob holder. Why? Okay, so most of the Vikings in 1958's The Vikings are wearing leather. Leather. Leather is the big thing here. Most of the time, they're also not wearing pants, which is weird. But Kirk Douglas does wear a pair of trousers, a tunic, and leather boots at one point, and he wears sort of knee-high, I guess you could call them ankle warmers or gaiters, cross-gartered. Now, these are not furry leg warmers. He's not wearing furry leg warmers, so I have to give them a bonus point for that. He is sat here, I'm looking at him, I'm going to screen cap this. He's in his throne, covered in skins. He has a tunic on. I mean, I think it's a suede tunic. He does just have an animal skin draped over him, which is weird. But he's wearing what look suspiciously like the shoes that I made, the Pamputis, the Irish-style Pamputis that I made. This isn't the worst costuming I've ever seen for a Hollywood Viking. He's wearing pants. There was cross-gartering done in the Viking period. It was a thing. You know what? This is a surprisingly decent little look. I'm going to keep watching though, see what else I can dig up for you. Okay. So, it gets bad. it gets bad pretty quick. I found a publicity shot of Ernest Borgnine, who's in this movie. The mighty Ernest Borgnine is in this, and he's wearing a weird, like, pieced leather vest with fake metal plates on it, and I'm not sure what it's meant to be. Like, it's clearly meant to be some kind of brigandine style jack of plates, which isn't a Viking armour at all. And he's wearing what looks like a bad copy of a Roman legionary's belt. But this is something that Tony Curtis wears in this film as well, and they both wear this, like, jack of plate type vest. I think at one point Kirk Douglas has one as well, and this is a direct borrowing from the Victorian period opera costumes used for Wagner's operas. So if you look online, if you search for Victorian Viking opera costume, you will get stuff that looks like this. So this is based not really on archaeology or history, this is based on theatre history, which I think is really interesting in itself. So this is kind of a theatre heritage costuming. Maybe the person who costumed this movie was taught by someone who costumed opera. It's really, really interesting. It's really, really interesting to see. So yeah, it's interesting to see some of this theatre influence coming into the costuming here. I must say, the English costumes are a pretty decent attempt. For the late 50s, Frockflix did an article on this that basically says the same thing. The English costumes are some of the most authentic looking, at least in terms of the general outline. So clearly there is some work going into looking at manuscripts and looking at illustrations from the period, because we have people wearing things like disc brooches and cloaks and tunics. Everybody's tunic is too long, all the men's tunics are far too long, but the women's dresses, they've kept them pretty simple, and as you guys know, keeping it simple is my watchword for doing historical costuming. Like, don't try and reinvent the wheel. But overall, I have to say, the Anglo-Saxon costuming here, way better than a lot of more modern films. Eric, who's played by Tony Curtis, does take his shirt off a lot, though. He does take his shirt off a lot. His chainmail is knitted. It's made of fabric. It's made of yarn. There's far too many sleeveless leather tunics being worn. At one point, Tony Curtis takes his shirt off, which is fun, and he's holding a sword that actually looks like it is based on one of the Peterson typological letters. I can't remember which letter it is. Editing Jimmy, tell us what type of sword this is based off. But that is a good... That for any time, for now, that is a good reproduction Viking sword. Like, that looks like a Viking age sword. Respect. The ships are pretty cool. They could have done the ships way worse. I mean, they're rad. Fun fact, the sword fight between Eric and Einar at the end of this film, in the Don Bluth animated film, The Secret of Nim, the final sword fight at the end of Secret of Nim is a shot-for-shot remake of the sword fight at the end of The Vikings from 1958. It is a shot-for-shot remake. In fact, I think they may have rotoscoped Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis's sword fight for it, which is amazing. So that's The Vikings from 1958. Lots of leather, lots of sleeveless tunics based off the operatic tradition of the 19th century. The women's kit is much less egregious than the men's. The Anglo-Saxon kit is much less egregious than the Viking kit. Overall, I don't know. Do I give these marks out of 10? What do I do? I'm going to give this 5.5 long ships out of 10. Let's do that. Why not? Okay, let's move on to 1964's The Long Ships. Here we go. Oh wow. Okay, so oh boy. So it starts with with a fun, like, Bayer tapestry kind of fake thing, which is obviously post-Viking Age, but that is by no means the worst thing I've seen in this movie so far. The worst thing that I've seen in this movie so far is probably everybody is pantsless. Nobody is wearing pants. None of the Vikings are wearing pants. Like, I have seen a lot more of Russ Tamblyn than I wanted to. Richard Widmark is the star of this movie, along with Sidney Poitier, and so far, Richard Widmark has just been wearing a leather vest, sleeveless leather vest, obviously coming from that tradition of Vikings and the opera before that. So this is really fun to see that that's still happening. We've also got leather vests with fake metal plates on them, fake metal studs. They might be real metal, but I can't really tell just from looking. I think they're probably plasticky stuff, though. So lots of sleeveless leather vests and no pants for the Vikings. I suspect that a lot of these Viking costumes probably came from the same costume store that they got the costumes for Vikings from. So that is my suspicion, is that they reused some costumes from the Vikings. Sidney Poitier is wearing a cravat for some reason. I don't understand. I found the costumes for this. These costumes were designed by David Folkes, with 2 Fs, David Folkes, who actually did some, fairly high-profile stuff. He did a fair few things in the 50s and 60s. He did Journey to the Centre of the Earth, Alexander the Great. He worked on a lot of set decorating in some other sort of 50s and 60s movies. He worked on You Only Live Twice, the James Bond movie. So he did quite a lot of high-profile stuff, David Folkes. And he was also helped by Anthony Mendelsohn, who did the costuming for Krull, amazingly, in the 80s, 1980, whatever it was. He did The Boys from Brazil. He worked on Thunderball. He worked on the 1970s Macbeth. He worked on loads of stuff. So these are costume designers who have worked on high-profile Hollywood movies, and I find it fascinating that we're seeing, these sleeveless leather vests again. We're seeing the plates, the fake armour. No trousers is a really interesting choice. We've also... hey. So we've got some interesting women's kit. This film has Rosanna Schiaffino in it, and they put her in a lot of bikinis. She wears the stereotypical belly dancer kit for a while. She's just in a leather vest mini skirt dress thing at one point. There's lots of thigh, lots of leg, lots of décolletage. So the women's kit is bad. Sidney Poitier is wearing a beautiful coiffure. His hair looks fabulous. Not for a Moorish nobleman. And at one point he's in his purple cravat and his white safari jacket, just being Sidney Poitier, just chewing the set and being a legend. Some of the Moorish armour is based off armour from the Islamic Caliphates of North Africa and the Near East, but it's not good. They haven't done a great job on this. For the sheer lack of pants, I'm going to have to give this one 4 long ships out of 10. That's only 4 long ships. That's not great. Let's move on to the 1970s. I've never seen any of these films before so far, by the way. I've seen The 13th Warrior, but I've never seen any of the rest of these films, and this is a very interesting experience for me. Okay, 1978, The Norseman, starring Susie Coelho and Lee Majors, both from The $6 Million Man. Nope. Nope. I don't know. No. 1,000 times no. No. Oh my god, no. Anyway, on with the film. Alright, the main thing I took from this is they put everybody in horny hats, and these are the horniest hats. These are the horniest hats I've ever seen. They are atrocious hats. My favourite piece of costuming from this was this poor dude who has a gut bulge in his breastplate. Look at him. It's amazing. The poor guy. all the Vikings are wearing horned helmets, and that is awful. And they're not just horned, they're horned with what is obviously like the stump of a buffalo's horn on either side of the helmet. And it gets a lot worse, because this film is about a group of Vikings going to North America and fighting Native Americans, and it is a racist film, you guys. This is pretty racist. One thing I forgot to mention in the Vikings, 1958's The Vikings, is take a look at this helmet from 1958. Now take a look at what they've put Lee Majors in 1978. Look at him! Would you trust this man with your children? This is incredible! It's amazing. Look at this publicity shot. Like, I'm gonna get you. Look at him. What absolutely made him look like an absolute pervert. It's just incredible. Just, I can't get my head over the costuming in this movie. I can't handle it. I need a break from the madness. Spare me the madness. It's awful. Alright, so they've dressed Lee Majors in basically a Renaissance Romanesque style breastplate and helmet, but with an eagle jammed on the top of it, leather eyepieces and cheek pieces, and it's the seashell style of helmet that you see in certain Renaissance pictures, and it is just... it's crap. You guys, this is crap. It's so bad. I feel bad for everybody who was involved with this movie. It was a genuine blockbuster. This was meant to be a genuine, actual, serious action movie. This isn't a spoof. And I feel especially bad for Susie Coelho, who is an English-born American actress with Indian heritage, who is made to wear this leather mini dress. It's just awful. It's just awful. It really, really is the worst costuming I've ever seen in a Viking movie. It's so bad. They're not... I mean, they're wearing tunics. Some of the Vikings are wearing tunics, I guess. So I can give them some points back for that, but... I'm trying to find things I can give them points for. The Longship isn't the worst longship in the world. This is filmed in Florida, by the way. And the Longship was actually found, I think in the 1990s or the 2000s. They found the Longship just, like, in a swamp in Florida. And they sailed it across Tampa Bay and it sank. But they were going to bring it back to Scandinavia. They were going to bring this longboat back to Scandinavia and have it as, like, a display piece. One of the universities, I think in Norway, was going to bring it back and it sank. So there is a Viking longship in Tampa Bay. If any of you guys are divers and you are certified to dive safely in Tampa Bay, go there and find me a photo. Take a picture of this longship. This sucky film. This is incredible, you guys. Oh my god, I can't believe this. Okay, I'm going to move on. I've got to move on. Let's move on to Eric the Viking, which I haven't seen for donkey's years. I watched it when I was way too young, I think, to understand it. So here we go. I love Terry Jones's work. I love Monty Python, and Neil Innes did the music for this, and I'm a big Bonzo Dog Doodah Band fan. So, you know, rest in peace, both legends. So let's have another crack at Eric the Viking. I've had to stop almost straight away. Content warning. If you're thinking of watching Eric the Viking, I'm watching the 15 rated version, which begins with a rape, which I had completely forgotten about. So please be aware that there is sexual assault in this movie, which has already brought it down in my estimations. I know, rape and pillage, but if you're gonna start your movie with a molest, it's not a good look. I also remembered I forgot to rate The Norseman 1 longboat out of 10, obviously. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to move ahead here with this and see how we go. Okay, Eric the Viking is a spoof. It's a spoof movie. It's obviously spooking. It's obviously spoofing all of the like sword and sorcery stuff that was going on in the 80s, so it's not to be taken seriously. It's got Tim Robbins and John Cleese and Terry Jones and Mickey Rooney is in it, being Mickey Rooney, just being amazing. I'm going to start with the women's kit in this. It actually has Eartha Kitt in it, and she is basically just dressed in rags, but Imogen Stubbs at one point has what looks like a pretty decent linen shift at one point in the movie, and she doesn't really wear a great deal more than that for the rest of the film. And what she does wear is this kind of blue over tunic-y thing. It's very loose, very shapeless, mostly, that she's wearing. So it's not great, but it's not like the most egregious thing in the world. Eric himself is... Tim Robbins is most of the time wearing a tunic of some kind. At one point he's wearing this sort of massive belt, which seems to become a trope in the 80s and 70s. There were some big belts in The Norseman, and I think that also stems from this operatic tradition where you see these big chunky belts. Obviously they have to be big to be visible at the back of the theatre, so you know, making a big belt for your costume makes sense. Actual Viking Age belts were pretty thin, they were only like an inch thick most of the time as far as we can tell. So he is dressing in some of these tropes that we've already seen. Some of the other kit in the background, some of the background artists are wearing semi-decent looking kit. There's a lady in the background here who's wearing a headscarf, a couple of headscarves, and what looks like an overdress over her kirtle. She is then draped in leather bits and animal skin, which is... it's a look. It's a look. But look at the texturing on the belts. It's leather with bits of metal stuck on them. So we've still got this leather with metal bits trope that we see all the way through the 50s, 60s and 70s, and now in the 80s we're seeing it as well. The main thing to bear in mind with this is it is a spoof, obviously. Take a look at this promo shot. This gives you an idea of the tone of the movie. It's a silly film. They've got massive 80s haircuts. There's big, long, flowing 80s hair with a sheepskin. We've got just bits of animal hide taped over people. Terrible-looking swords. And don't take it seriously. But we're going to gloss over the main feature of the costuming in this movie, which is Terry Jones's beautiful Roman woman costume that he wears at one point. He is a terrifyingly attractive Roman woman. Oh, God bless you, Terry, for everything you've done. Apart from that rape scene, because that was a really bad call. I'm gonna have to give this... I'm gonna give this 3 long ships, because most of the Vikings are wearing pants and tunics. But you can still see all the tropes. All of the leather vests are there, all of the metal bits strapped onto people's costuming are there. It's all still there. So this is what I'm talking about. You can track these designs. And so far we've tracked these designs for 31 years. So let's jump ahead another 10 years to 1999 to watch Antonio Banderas as Ibn Fadlan in The 13th Warrior, which is just Beowulf and Grendel, effectively, as far as I'm aware, as far as I can remember. I haven't watched this since like 2003, so here we go. Antonio Banderas in 1999. I had forgotten how beautiful you were. Muy bien. God, he's a beautiful man. Senor Banderas, if you ever watch any of my videos, please go out with me. Okay. Right, let's take a look at some of the costuming here. So we don't actually have to look much at Antonio Banderas himself. Most of the time he is dressing in Arabic clothing. It's not good depiction, particularly of Islamic clothing of the era, as far as I can tell, but I'm not a specialist, so what I would like to look at is this, which is leather trousers and leather lamellar armour, seemingly being held up with tortoise brooches, worn by women in the period. That's not how their armour worked, you guys, at all. It's really bad lamellar armour. I mean, leather lamellar armour is not good lamellar armour anyway for Vikings. If you're going to wear lamellar armour as a Viking, make it metal. But this is just dreadful. Look how big those plates are. Those plates should only be like this big. They're huge. But there we go. At least he's wearing a cloak with a nice... Well, it's not nice, but at least he's wearing a cloak with a brooch. And the sword in the foreground that Senor Banderas is holding has a 3-lobed pommel. It's not made authentically. I'm not convinced that that's actually made of metal. But at least they have made some kind of an attempt. So let's move on. We've got some beauties here. We've got a leather vest with metal studs. Beowulf spends some time in this movie wearing fantasy armour, and that is okay, because this is a fantasy film. I mean, we have Ibn Fadlan travelling to meet the Vikings when Beowulf is around, and Beowulf is 5th century, I think, and set in Denmark. This is complete fantasy. It's a fantasy movie pretending to be a historical fiction. His armour is ridiculous. I mean, this looks 15th century. It's 15th century armour, isn't it? Underneath that, he's wearing like just the most generic buff suede leather stuff. However, the dress in this scene is meant to be an apron dress, and it's not the worst dress in the world. It's not good. It's definitely not Viking, but the red kirtle that she's wearing, if it didn't have that white thing over it, passable. Passably early medieval. Richard Curran's beautiful ginger hair is always nice to see. But for now, I'm going to have to rate the 13th Warrior, and in terms of its costuming, I mean, it's not good costuming for the Viking period. You can see they're trying to make Hollywood Vikings. They're not trying particularly to be historical, which I can accept. It's a fantasy movie. So I'm going to give these guys... I'm going to give them 5 long ships out of 10. Mostly for Antonio Banderas. If it was just based off Antonio Banderas content, 10 out of 10. Ooh, caliente. Okay, we're going to fast forward 9 years to 2008's Outlander, which is apparently a sci-fi Beowulf and Grendel set in the Viking Age. So I am incredibly excited about this. It stars Jim Caviezel. And also John Hurt as well is in it, apparently. So we've got John Hurt and Jim Caviezel starring in this movie. I apologise if I've pronounced his name incorrectly, but here we go. Okay, so it's it's not good, guys. Let's just take a look at a few select pieces from this film. We have John Hurt, the mighty, venerable John Hurt, wearing a really fun patchwork sort of cloaky, cassocky thing with all of this weird mixed embroidery all over it. And I really like how much embroidery there is in this film. One thing I really like about this film compared to some of the other ones, in fact all of the other ones, is how much colour the Norse are wearing. In 1958, the Anglo-Saxons are all wearing all these colourful dresses and tunics. The Vikings are all wearing browns. In this, we've got blues and reds and yellows and greens and embroidery everywhere, and that's great. They loved colour, so bonus points for that straight away. John Hurt, as an elderly man of great standing, has a long beard and long hair, but he's got his hair plaited and his beard is being kept in check. It's kind of fantasy the way he's tied his beard into those forks. That's probably not how most beards looked, but you know what? Another bonus point for that. The dress we've got here, the apron dress, honestly, I like that. I like the way they've done that. It's not held up with brooches, it's just tied over the shoulders, but you know what? You can hold an apron dress up like that. You can make the loops on the front of the dress, just here, and then tie the ties over and tie a knot in them. That's plausible. The underdress isn't brilliant. It's very just generic. Oh, and it's got the separate sleeves. Never mind. No, the dress underneath is not good. The separate sleeves are not really a thing at this period at all. So minus points for that. But for an apron dress decorated with embroidery, how can I not give you points for that? You know, how can I not give you points? Never mind, it's side lacing. Bonus point rescinded for the apron dress, because this is a side laced... It's just bad now. That's ruined it for me. I'm sorry. I was really enjoying that. I was giving them so many points, but it's side laced. And as far as we know, they weren't making these kind of side-laced dresses. Later in the medieval period, yes, absolutely, but... So right the way through, she's wearing this blue dress with the separate sleeves, and it's just not... It's not good. But in this scene, we've got these strange, like, pop-riveted leather pauldrons. They're gross. They're awful. That's not how armour looked in the early medieval period. And all the way through this film, there is this bad leather armour stuff. So we've got more leather lamellar with these leather pauldrons, and that's such a shame. And we've also got these long medieval belts without any kind of strap end on them, which is just not how they wore their belts in the early medieval period. That's not the fashion. That wasn't the fashion. The fashion was for a fairly short belt with some kind of a strap end. And the sleeveless tunics are back. We've got the sleeveless tunics still. The sleeveless leather tunics are in abundance in this film, which is disappointing, but it's a bad mid-2000s, mid-late 2000s sci-fi film. The interesting thing is, again, the background artists seem to be wearing some semi-decent stuff. So take a look at this shot here, and we've got, in the foreground, a weird sleeveless dress, which looks very cold for the time of year they're filming in. Looks like it was filmed in spring or autumn. And we've got the sleeveless leather tunic, again, under the bad leather armour. But in the background, we've got people wearing what look like passable male shirts. They're a bit long, but they're passable. People are wearing cloaks. People are wearing decent-looking trousers. Very generic boots, but I understand footwear can be expensive, and I should point out, I've had to costume productions before, I know it can be expensive, but we've got people wearing dresses and cloaks. In fact, the woman here in the red dress seems to be wearing her cloak in a reminiscent style of those Valkyrie brooches. They're pre-Viking Age, by the way, but they were recast in the Viking Age. So the background artists, again, seem to be wearing this kind of sort of generic medieval-looking kit that looks better than what the stars are wearing. I mean, look at this, for goodness sake. I mean, it's just awful. Like, seriously, leather bustier and foxes? I mean, the guy with the mobile phone is dressed more authentically than her, so... we've also got hogback-style houses, which are kind of fun, but overall, 2 long ships out of 10. It has to be. And also we get a Viking boat burning on the water, and that's absolutely just not how it works. I should point out that if any of you guys would like to see me do a video on how I would improve costumes for Vikings on TV, that's something I plan to do. So if you have any suggestions for characters or films or TV shows that you'd like to see me try and do a fix on, I am well up for doing that. I want to do a fix for some of the costumes in the TV show Vikings to make them more authentic, give me a chance to do some of my drawing and sketching that I enjoy doing. So please do let me know what characters or TV shows you'd like me to address the costumes in and try to fix. Okay, so the final thing we're going to look at is the TV show Vikings. So take a look at this. What is this? This is a sleeveless leather vest with texturing very reminiscent of this, worn by Kirk Douglas in 1958. Take a look at this belt, huge leather belt, which is very reminiscent of this guy right here. Take a look at this dress, very, very similar to this dress that we just saw. So, these are from the 2010s, which means that since 1958, these tropes of the leather vest, sleeveless, with bits of metal over it, or weird texture put in, has become an established part of Viking costuming. This is now what Viking costumes look like. The cross-gartering and the furry leg wraps are what Vikings look like now. The leather vests, the terrible, terrible stitching. This is all part of this Viking tradition now. Viking costuming for film and TV doesn't draw from the archaeology and from the history as much as it should. It draws from a theatrical heritage. And that's because a lot of theatrical and film costumers learn from other theatrical and film costumers how to make costumes. They learn about how to get the mood across for certain characters. They learn how to get atmosphere across on screen. Rather than learning how the fashion of the period worked and developed. And that is changing. I know for a fact that's changing because I know that there are universities out there teaching their film and theatre costume makers how to make historical clothing based off historical evidence, which is fantastic. But when you have things like this in Vikings, and the costume designer claims that they have made a real effort to make it authentic, when it's obvious that it's just, and I don't want to say stolen, but stolen from a 1950s Viking film? That's pretty egregious. It's pretty obvious that this isn't an incredibly original way of costuming Vikings. This is derivative of 60 years of film costuming tradition, which is understandable. You can understand that after 60 years, this has become the established way of doing this part of your job. This is an industry where costumes are reused decade after decade, as we just saw. Especially when they're as tropey as the ones that we just saw. And they're all pretty tropey, guys. If you've survived this long and you're still watching the video, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was as fun for you to look through these costumes as it was for me to watch all these movies. In fact, I hope it was significantly more fun for you than it was for me. I plan to do some more stuff about film and TV. Thank you all who have just subscribed to the channel. It's wonderful to see the channel growing so much. I'm going to be doing another live stream in February, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And as ever, diolch yn fawr iawn am ymuno. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. And tan tro nesa, hwyl am y tro. Till the next time, bye for now. Why have they dressed Lee Majors like a paedophile? Why have they dressed Lee Majors like a paedophile? Oh my god, he's actually dressed as a perv. I know. I know. It's from 1978. Oh, wowie. Brilliant.